Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today, as you can see, we're going to be doing a tier list. This is going to be a tier list for Thracia 776. This is actually a tier list I've been kind of looking forward to. Unlike the first 4 games, which we've been doing on our series of Iron Manning all the Fire Emblem games, which those were mostly my first time playing those games, with the exception of Genealogy, slightly. Thracia I've actually played a bunch of times, and I've actually attempted an Iron Man twice before. We finally completed an Iron Man, which just in and of itself was super cool. I absolutely loved that. And I've always kind of wanted to do a tier list. Now, just like the first 4 games, I don't have as much expertise on this game than I do on something like the Genealogy or the GBA games. But it should be a good time. I like doing these tier lists. So I also want to make this, and all my tier lists are more of like kind of a guide. So if you're looking to play Thracia, I might be able to help you out a little bit. By the way, if anyone has completed an Iron Man of Thracia, pat yourself on the back, give yourself a round of applause. It's tough out there, or at least it was for me. Honestly, if you've just completed Thracia in general, you know, that shit's tough. So anyways, for me, the way I'm going to break these down is S tier are characters that I would highly recommend using. They're, of course, the best of the best in the game. I think if you don't use them on a playthrough, there's probably got to be some reason not to do it because they're just so strong. A tier are units that I would highly recommend using. I don't think they're as necessary as S tier, of course. They may have like some slight flaw, like their recruitment time, for example, but they are extremely good and I would highly recommend using them. B tier are units that you can use or not use. Sometimes they're like growth units, but really good growth units, or like pre-promotes, but pre-promotes that are really good for like a certain period of the game. So they're units I would recommend using still, and you probably will wind up using them. One of the things about Thracia is that with the fatigue system and just so many units being good in different ways, you're going to wind up using a lot of units. It's why I don't think there's really any of the units in the game that are bad per se. But yeah, they do have some flaws or like fall off, things like that. And then we have C tier, which I think are units who are pretty flawed. They either have very small sort of niches to them during very select portions of the game, or they're like growth units with some kind of glaring flaw. So you can use them, but you don't have to use them throughout the game. And then D tier are just the really bad units. I would not recommend using these units basically at all. You certainly can. I don't think there's any F tier units in this game, but so anyways, those are my tiers. Let's get right into it before this becomes too long. We're going to start with Dermot. Dermot is a really interesting unit. He comes really late in the game, but he's a pretty good class, a Forest Knight. He also has the Bayo Blade, which gives him, I think, what is it, Vantage, and what is the other skill that it gives? I don't know, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good sword. His stats, on the other hand, are pretty weak. He does have the Charm skill, which in Genealogy, I think is like amazing. I love the Charm skill, but in Thracia, it's useful, but not that useful. I think I'm going to put him down here in C tier. He just comes so late, and he has a pretty darn small niche, but he's a solid unit. He's just recruited so late, and he's not one of the busted late units like for example the next couple of characters. Next up we have Sias. So Sias and Sed are decision characters. You can decide to keep one or the other. I think Sed is by far the better choice, given that Hulseti is just, or Forseti, whatever it's called, it's just so strong. But they're both really good. I'm gonna put them both, I think, in A. And I'm gonna put Galsus there as well. Now you could put any of these units in S, and based off the assumption of S being units I would recommend using every single time, all 3 of these should be there, but I think because their niche is so small and they're only recruited at the very end of the game, I think A is about the highest I'll go on them. They're all extremely good. Sed has Forseti, which essentially makes him invincible, which is kind of funny to say because he's died on both of my last 2 Iron Man playthroughs. But no, he's extremely strong. Galsus is extremely strong as well with good movement stars and skills. And then Sias has a really good staff rank. Maybe Sias is a little worse, actually, because these 2 offer really good combat, which is actually kind of useful at the end of the game. But yeah, all 3 of these are extremely good. Highly recommend using them, depending on which one you recruit, of course, between Sed and Sias. Next up, we have Safi. All right, first thing to know about this game, and I guess I kind of mentioned this with the staff rank on Sias, staves are busted. Specifically, warp in this game is extremely good. Status staves can hit anywhere on the map, and you can get a lot of magic with stuff like Pure Waters to be able to hit with them. Safi is our starting staff user. I'm going to put her immediately up in S. She's the first unit that can use warp if you can get her to A, although I guess Salem can also potentially do it, but she can get to A pretty easily. She also has a unique staff with the hammer and staff, which is amazing. It essentially just means a bunch more warp staves or thief staves or whatever you want out of it. Maybe Graph Calibers. She's super good. Easy S for me. She's one of the best characters in the game. Next up we have Lifis. Thieves are extremely good in this game. Not only can they open doors and pick locks on chests, which is really, really crucial, there are very easy ways to get soft locked in this game, and Lifis does a really nice job of preventing that. But they can also steal stuff off of opponents, even stuff they currently have equipped. So magic off of the mages is something you're going to be doing a lot, especially when he's first recruited, or re-recruited after the Mancer escape. So Lifis is really good. I almost think he should be an S. Should I put him in S? I'm going to put Lifis in S. I don't know, man. He's just so good. I mean, he's so useful. And while there are other options like Laura and Pan, we'll talk about them later, Lifis is just available so early. I love Lifis. He's so useful. Yeah, unbelievably useful. And he's better than Laura-ish. We'll talk about Laura when we get there. But next up we have Maka. Maka's an interesting unit. She is fairly useful for a very specific portion of the game, that being the Mancer escape. Definitely going to put her down in C. I don't think she belongs in D, even though I don't think she's a very good unit going forward, but during the Mancer escape in particular, she's pretty useful. Anyone that's available during the first couple chapters of the Mancer escape, I think immediately is at least C tier. Speaking of that, we have Brighton, who I'm also going to be putting here in C, probably better than Maka, to be honest. Maka has Vantage. Brighton has the Wrath skill. Wrath is extremely good in this game. It guarantees a crit on counterattack, which is obviously just extremely powerful. So yeah, unfortunately his stats, base stats and growths are pretty weak. But yeah, he's really useful during the Mancer escape, so it's hard to say he's that bad. Maybe he should even be B, because he's even an Axe Knight. But next up we have Laura. I would probably put Laura in A with Lifis in S, because she is a thief, which is useful, but a lot weaker than him because of her low constitution. But she becomes a dancer a little bit later in the game, which actually probably makes her better than Lifis. She's of course the only dancer in the game. And dancing's really good. Obviously, it's always good, but it can allow you to like double warp or double status stab or things of that nature. Dancing is just really, really good, and she can be a dancer. So pretty easy there to put her in S. And even before she's a dancer, she's a thief, which is also really useful. So really good. Next up we have Fergus, another character that's available throughout the Mancer escape. But unlike Brighton and Maka, who fall off basically immediately afterwards, Fergus is actually really good throughout the entire game. I think he has some of the like follow-up crit. I think he has like 3 or 4, which means he's going to crit a lot. He's got really, well, solid bases. He's got pretty good growths. He's a really good class. I really like using swords on horseback and when you're not on horseback, because it allows you to develop that sword rank. So then when you're unmounted in indoor chapters, you still have a really good sword rank, which I like a lot. Where he should be an A, it really is going to depend on whether you value like more of a growth unit or more of a like an endgame powerhouse. I don't know. We'll put him ahead of these two just because he's available for such a high percentage of the game. Next we have Karen. I really like Karen. I used to think that you really had to train her to make her like really useful, but honestly you don't. It is really, really nice on very specific chapters to have a good combat flyer, but you really don't need that for her to be a really useful unit. Just the ability to like fare units around on specific chapters is so nice. Eventually you get characters like Dean and Edda, but Karen's pretty unique in that regard for a long time, so I'm gonna put her in A as well. I really like Karen, and if you do train her combat ability with like scrolls and stuff, she's really useful, so I like her quite a bit. She's also available during the Mancer escape, which even though she can't do much combat, she can get captured with the best of them, which is actually a pretty useful ability. Next we have Dulcian, another character who's only really useful during the Mancer escape. I guess his higher like bulk does make him maybe better than these units, but he's a lot worse class than Brighton. He isn't of Wrath, so I'm just gonna put him down here in C. I think Dulcian is a fine unit, and I like that he can be pretty useful for a while after the Mancer escape, just as like a fill-in. But there's a lot of that going around in this game, so I think pretty easy C for him. Next up we have Asbel, who is probably the best character in the entire game. Asbel is just so good. So I mentioned that stabs are really good in this game. We'll also talk about abilities, which are also really good. I mentioned Wrath. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Wrath is a really good skill. Asbel doesn't have any skills, but he does have a unique weapon, and unique weapons are also really good in this game, given that they have, I think, 60 uses, or maybe it's 50. No, it's probably 50. Maybe 60. I don't know. But Graph Caliber, which is his unique weapon, is so powerful. He gets really good promotion bonuses when he promotes. He's recruited really early. You can grind him to a stage extremely early, and then basically warp skip any chapter for like most of the rest of the game with him. Also the ability to have really powerful 1-2 range allows you to just wipe out huge swaths of enemies. As someone who lost Asbel fairly early on his last playthrough, using him as opposed to not using him is like night and day throughout the playthrough. There's one other unit that also sort of fills his role that we'll talk about later, but yeah, Asbel is just so good. It's hard to replace him because of that Graph Caliber. Next up we have Nana, another staff user, although her staff rank is quite a bit lower. I think I'm just gonna put her in A. I've never really been able to get Nana to use warp, probably ahead of Fergus to be honest, but she's a really good class. The Earth Sword is pretty darn useful and she can still heal, so I might be overrating her. I'm actually not really sure if I'm overrating or underrating her, but I would highly recommend using Nana. I think you will use Nana in almost every playthrough quite a bit. The ability to heal, the ability to be mounted, and the Earth Sword are just a really good combination, even if her staff rank never really does it for me. Next up we have Leaf. Leaf's a really interesting unit. He's our Lord, of course, and if it weren't for the Master Escape, I'd probably say he was pretty crappy. Leaf actually tends to be pretty useful for me during the Master Escape, but that has a lot to do with me giving him stat boosters early. But if you always do that, which I'd recommend doing, he's actually pretty useful. Although I should probably judge him without the stat boosters. Without the stat boosters, he's probably just a C tier unit, worse than the rest of these units. With them, maybe a little bit better. One of the great things about Leaf and one of the great things about many characters in this game is with scrolls, you can make them extremely good, but Leaf doesn't really have a great skill. I mean, he has Adept, which is solid. The Light Brand is a nice specific weapon to him. I will say, if you can get him to be able to use the Kingslayer, you can just have like a walking charm for like the latter stages of the game, which is actually pretty useful, but that requires like a different weapon. I think Leaf can be made into a very useful unit, but just Leaf as he is not very good. So I think C is. He is still useful during the Master Escape, so I don't want to put him in D. Next we have Hicks. Hicks is the first character I'm going to put in D. Unfortunately, he's just recruited at like the tail end of the Master Escape, meaning that while he has all the same problems that characters like Brighton and Maka and Dulcian have, and Leaf for that matter, he doesn't really have any of the upside. He's never really useful. It's hard to put him lower than D because you can still deploy him on chapters and he can do things. And he's still available throughout, or for the very last Master Escape chapter, so maybe he could do something there. The poleaxe is nice, but yeah, he's not very good. Next up we have Shiva. Shiva has Soul, which is kind of a cool skill, and I think also has a good like follow-up crit multiplier, but Myrmidons and Swordmasters in this game, they're okay, but they're not spectacular. Shiva just doesn't have a lot of like special stuff going for him. I think I'm also going to put him in C. It's weird because I think he's a better unit than Brighton, Maka, and Dulcian and Leaf, but he's also recruited at the end again of the Master Escape, so it's hard to rank him. Tournament maybe shouldn't be at the top of C. I don't know. I'm just going to put him in C. I don't think he's very good. Next up we have Kyrian. Kyrian's a unit that when you first look at him and his growths, you might think that he's an exceptional unit, and he is pretty good. The problem is he doesn't have a specific weapon, and he also doesn't have a good skill. He does have, I think it's a 4 follow-up crit multiplier, which is really high, to be honest, and it's kind of a skill in and of itself. On top of the fact that he can use swords on horseback, which again, I really like because it allows you to train that sword rank, so then when he's unmounted, you can use strong swords. If I was doing this prior to my last playthrough, I would probably put him in like C or D, but I kind of want to put him in B. Again, I don't really know where to rank him. He's recruited fairly early. He's a good class. He's got that follow-up crit multiplier. I don't know. I think he's good, but I'm not really sure about that, to be honest. I would recommend using him. I think he's useful. Next up, we have Selphina. Selphina's not very good. She can get a Brave Bow, which is kind of cool. And she does have a good bow rank, also a good level, so if you want to like promote her really fast, you can, but a bow knight is not a very good class. Bows are fine in this game, but not really that special, and yeah, her recruitment time's fine, but I'm not going to put her in D just because she does offer some pretty good combat, and the ability to use strong bows means she can actually be like a pretty solid unit to deploy and just get some combat out of, but I don't think she's that good. I would put her in C, probably not recommend using her. All right, next up we have the 3 units that come with her. These I'm just going to immediately put in D. These are all very generic units, kind of like Kyrian if you look at their base stats, other than Robert, because Bow Knight's not very good. But if you look at Elba and Kane, I think that's their names, base stats and growth, they actually look okay, but with no skills or a follow-up crit multiplier, or proficient, like a proficient weapon or anything. They're also like a good class, but not a great class. They're just not that good, and they don't really come at a point in the game where you need them. What you're really looking for in Thracia is, again, one of those things I just mentioned, or some kind of like solid stat that can allow you to deploy them on chapters where you have to deploy a lot of units, and they don't really fill any purpose in that regard. So next up we have Fred. Fred I think is a solid B unit. We're going to be seeing probably a lot of these. In fact, I'll put Olwen here as well. Actually, I should talk about Olwen individually. So Fred is, again, just a solid unit. He's a paladin, which is a good class. Immediately comes with pretty solid stats that are going to allow him to deal some decent, you know, combat for like the mid game and maybe even to the end game. Again, having these units because of the fatigue system that can just kind of fill spaces and do something is pretty useful. And Fred's combat, especially through the mid game, is actually really good. So I think easy B for him. Olwen, I'm also going to put in B. Olwen's a really interesting unit because her stats are pretty bad, and the Dime Thunder or Dire Thunder, which is her special weapon, does weigh her down a ton, making her extremely frail. But it's a Brave Tome, which is really unique and really powerful. So maybe Olwen should even be higher. Olwen always winds up either being disappointing or just dying for me. So I wouldn't really say I'm an expert on her. I think it's easier to use Fred, but Dire Thunder is an extremely powerful tome. So I think easy B, another unit that you can just deploy on any chapter throughout the entire game and get some decent combat out of. Next up we have Merida. Merida's a really interesting unit because everything that she is should be a bad unit. She's a Myrmidon, she's low level, and she's recruited too late. But Merida has enough going on to make her a really good combat unit. The problem is this game doesn't really value combat that much, but she has a really good weapon in the Merida's Blade, which is really powerful, and she's got really good skills. Immediately coming with, I think she has Luna to begin with, or maybe Merida's Blade gives her Luna, I think. And then you can get Astra from Shannon, which makes her a really, really strong offensive unit. It's just that, again, Swordmaster is not a very good class, and she has all the problems that I just mentioned. So I'm going to put her in B and be pretty happy with that. I think she's a growth unit that gives just enough to make her a good unit, not some C unit like Shiva, who's just not very good. Maybe she should even be better, but singular combat like that, especially when characters like Asbel exist, is not that useful. So next up we have Finn. Finn's a really interesting unit. Actually, he's not that interesting. He's pretty boring. He's just good. He's recruited at the very beginning, then re-recruited very quickly. He's got really good base stats. He's a good class. He also has a specific weapon in the Brave Lance. It's actually kind of funny because the Brave Lance gives him plus 10 luck and the Miracle skill. And the way the Miracle skill works is it gives you a 3 times your luck percentage to survive basically like a death blow. Which means with plus 10 luck and capped luck, he has a 90% chance to proc a miracle when he's about to die, which honestly is not that useful because there's a 10% chance he dies every time you do that, but it's kind of cool. In any case, the Brave Lance, along with giving plus 10 luck, is also unique to him, and Brave weapons are really good. I don't really know, is he good enough for A? Probably, just because his recruit time is so good, and the Brave Lance is so useful. Finn is a character I would highly recommend using. I think he's quite good. Next up we have Salem. Okay, I will admit, I like Salem a lot. I think he's a good unit. But he dies for me every goddamn time and I never get to use him. So I'm gonna put Salem at the top of B. And if you think that's wrong, you are absolutely entitled to lambast me in the comments, right? In fact, if you think that's wrong, leave a comment right now, because this might be like an A tier unit or maybe even S tier unit, because he does come with a decent staff rank. Actually his staff rank is really good. All right, I'll put him in A. Maybe that's too high, I don't know. But again, this motherfucker dies for me every goddamn time. But his really good base staff rank is, I think, good enough to put him in A. And he give you some decent combat output, but mostly it's just that staff rank that you're looking for. But yeah, he dies for me every time. Next up we have Pan. Pan is actually kind of an interesting unit. He's like a better version of Lifis, but recruited quite a bit later. He is useful, and can even give you some decent combat, which Lifis may or may not be able to, depending on if you trained him. I don't really know what to do with Pan. I'm going to shove Pan in A. Salem should actually probably be farther up, right? I don't know what to do with Salem. I feel bad. I'll just put Pan at the bottom of A. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's good, but I just think Lifis can do a lot of the things that he can do. His movement stars are really good. I think he has like 5 movement stars, which is really good, but... Okay, and we're back. Sorry about that that little cut. But yeah, I think Pan, I think A, you know, he offers enough stuff, but don't really know what to say with him. He overlaps a lot with Lifis, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if Lifis has died. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like high A, something like this. Pan might be better than I'm giving him credit for. I'm not really sure. Again, the Thief ability, really useful, but a lot of the really important Thief stuff is before getting Pan, so I don't know. Next up we have Trude or Thude or something. I think it's Trude. I never really used Trude. He might be better than I'm giving him credit for, but I'm going to put him at probably the bottom of D here, to be honest. He just like recruited late Myrmidon. Again, Merida gets a pass because she has so much going for her, but Shiva sucks, Maka sucks, and so does Trude. He can be okay, but yeah, he's not very good. Next up we have Tina. So Tina is a unit that I used to think was good because she can use staves and has some unique staves, but I never really used her too much because I either failed to go to that guidance chapter or she dies. On my latest playthrough, I actually got to use Tina, and holy crap, outside of missing staves constantly, which is really, really annoying, she is extremely good. But the unlocked staff, which only she can use, and especially the thief staff, are broken. The thief staff is so good. If you can get her a lot of magic and then combine that with like pure waters, she can steal almost anything in the entire game, which sounds broken because it is. It's extremely good. I did tons of stuff on this. With this, I was able to warp skip by basically killing the boss on the Reinhardt chapter by stealing his Master Lance. On the final chapter, I actually stole everything that the Gulsis Deadlord had. And then he actually traded for a hammer and kept trying to attack me, which is kind of funny. But yeah, she's extremely good. I think definitely an S. I don't know that she's better than Tina because she is recruited a bit later, but she's so good. I really love Tina, honestly. She's probably my favorite character in the last playthrough I did. Next up is Glade. Glade, for most of what he is a pretty boring and generic unit, but he's recruited early enough, he has pretty good bases, and he has a leadership star, which are all quite good. In fact, I'm probably gonna have this like Fred, Ulwin, Glade. Let's just grab Relf really quick. I'm gonna put Relf in here too. These are all units that, again, will see play in your army. They just will get deployed, right, at times because of like fatigue and stuff. Relf is another unit, just really solid bases. In fact, he should probably be even higher. I'll probably do something like this. Again, I'm not really sure about Ulwin, but Relf's a hero that's recruited a little late, but just has really, really solid stats. I'll also grab Conamore really quick and put him in here too. Again, recruited a bit late, but has a leadership star and is just quite good. Xavier I actually think is a pretty good person to put here as well. Discounting Xavier's recruitment, because if you count that, he should be FFF tier because it's ridiculous. And he's not that good of a unit, but he's a solid contributor. Actually, because of his kind of crappy class, he should maybe be a little bit lower. I'll probably put him in C, actually, to be honest. But these are all units that are just, solid combat units in their own right. Next up, we have Dean. I really like Dean. He's like a Karen that's recruited in the mid game, but actually offers some pretty good combat. If you can get the like signature weapon for him, which is like the Dragon Killer or something, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's really good. Karen with combat's really, really strong. I don't know that he should necessarily be S tier, but definitely A, maybe like right behind Karen just because he's recruited a bit later. Dean's really useful. Edda offers a lot of the same utility, but at this point, we already have Karen who can do basically the same thing Edda can. And we have Dean who can now do Edda's job, but with combat. So I'll put her like somewhere in B. Maybe here. Actually, Karen should probably not be this high. Yeah, I think I like that a little better. Maybe Edda at the back. She just gets overlapped with a lot of other units, which again, isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if those units die or are unrecruited, but she just doesn't have a lot going for her outside of her class, which is good. Next up, we have Homer. I used to think Homer was really crappy because Paragon on a unit that can't promote is not very good. Then I realized he could promote. Homer is really, really good. Promotion gains for Sages are pretty exceptional. Paragon just immediately makes him easy to train, very easy to train. You're never really going to do the staff rank stuff of stuff like Safi or Tina, but I do really like Homer. I think I even like him better than just the like pre-promote contributors. I think I'm gonna put him up here with Finn. He's so easy to train with the Paragon skill. I think Homer's really, really good. I like him a lot. Then we have Lenoan. Lenoan's really good. I'm gonna put her up here with the other staff users. She is capable of using warp fairly easily. You just have to use staffs with her a little bit. Although part of her problem is that she can't promote until pretty late, but still she has really good growths and can offer some good combat utility. I do think she's the worst of the staff users just because she promotes so late, and I don't think she can use staffs until she promotes. Or no, she can use staffs even unpromoted. Never mind, she's really good. Yeah, I like her a lot. Just a character capable of using warp. Honestly, immediately S tier, that's just the way it works. Then we have Othin. So Othin is basically the other Asbel. I'm going to put him right up here, right next to Asbel. Othin combines two really good things. Number one, his availability is really good, but number one, he has the Puji or the Buji or something, whatever it's called, his signature weapon, which is really good. It's basically just a stronger hand axe, which doesn't seem that strong, but when you combine it with the Wrath skill, which again guarantees crits on counterattacks, suddenly Othin is a beast because you have this weapon that can essentially kill any boss that attacks you with a Wrath crit. So Othin, again, very similar to Asbel, can just absolutely destroy entire swaths of enemies. And when you combine that with like Warp, having a unit that can do that can kill bosses like Othin or Asbel is really, really useful. So I do think Asbel is quite a bit better, and maybe I'm overrating Othin just a bit, but I think him and Asbel offer that throughout the entire game and have great availability. So I like them a lot. Next up we have, I think it's like Irios or something like that. He can only be recruited if Ulwin dies, which is kind of funny, but I'm not going to hold that against him. He's a solid unit. He doesn't have the special weapon of Ulwin, so he's kind of worse in that regard, but basically better in every other regard. I'm going to put him next to Ulwin, maybe better, maybe worse, I'm not really sure, but another just strong pre-promote contributor to the army that you will see play if you go that route. You will wind up using him a bit. Then we have, I think it's like Shroff or Sloof, which is actually a character in Genealogy along with Dermot and Nana, which is sort of funny, but, and Leaf, I guess. Yeah, he's capable of using staves, so immediately up there. I think he also has really good movement stars. I think he's got a bunch of those, which is really good. Maybe he should be somewhere else in this list of staff users, but again, he can use staves. I don't think, again, I think these are the two best staff users just because they have unique staves. He does not, but he is really good. Then we have, oh my god, I do not know her name. I've never actually recruited this unit, I'll admit. Her recruitment is also pretty annoying, kind of like Xavier's. I'm going to discount that. And probably just put her next to Edda. She's recruited later. I think it's later. But she's got better combat. Really, she just provides the same thing. Again, flying utility is useful, but she's recruited pretty late. And she doesn't have the combat of Dean. So I think pretty easy to just put her next to Edda. A little worse because she's recruited a bit later. Then we have Sarah. Sarah's really good, man. She has really good bases, really good growths, and a good staff rank that I believe just immediately goes to A, whether you train it or not when she promotes. And also Paragon, so really easy to train her. I think she's still worse, again, than Tina and Safi. You can make an argument that she's not, not really sure. She does have her own unique stuff going on. She also has Wrath. I think she might have Miracle as well, which is good. She's an extremely good combat unit. Although Wrath on a frail unit is not quite as good as Wrath on a more bulky unit like Othin. But she is really good. I just think Thief Staff and Hammer and Staff are a bit better, but Sarah's really, really good. Then we have Shannon. Shannon's a unit that I'm going to put in D, although this is really going to depend on how much you value the bargain skill, because that's really all Shannon shows up with. Technically, he gives Marie to Astra too, but, you know, I'm not going to give that to him. Yeah, the bargain skill, which he comes with, makes everything cost half, which is useful, but I never really use the shops too much in Thracia. If you're using the shops a lot and you really value bargain, perhaps he's a higher tier unit for you. I still think he's better than these other units just because bargain's a useful skill and these other units indeed don't really have anything useful going on. But yeah, I don't really use it that much. So then we have Miranda. Miranda honestly might just be the worst character in the game. She does have Wrath, which is really nice. And maybe Wrath means that she should be better than some of these other units, but man, she just has nothing going for her. Actually, she's probably not the worst character in the game. I think there's a worse character, but yeah, she's a low level mage that's recruited just way too late. Her bases and growths just are not very good. Mage Knight's a cool class, but not that strong. And again, other than Wrath, she just has nothing going for her. So it's funny because Miranda's actually like, I don't want to say that important of a character, but kind of. I mean, she's a princess of a pretty important land, and she has a relationship with Connemore. So I feel like they should have given her like something cool. Wrath kind of fits her personality, but I don't know. I wish she had like something going on other than that. Next up, we have Amalda. Amalda is a really interesting unit. She has exceptional magic for a physically attacking unit, or specifically a unit that can use swords, which means that stuff like the Flame Sword, the Thunder Sword, and the Wind Sword are exceptionally good on her. She can also use staffs, which is already really, really good, and she's a good class. So I never really recruit or use Amalda, so it's really hard for me to rank her, but I think she does sort of transcend this B tier of just solid contributors and actually find herself an A, because she's so unique and so cool if you can actually recruit her. I really like her, but I'm really unsure of how truly good she is. She might be better than I'm giving her credit for. I'm not really sure. Then we have Halvin. Man, Halvin and Othin, night and day, huh? Halvin does not have a unique weapon like the Bougie, and also does not have a great skill like Wrath. He does have Vantage, but Vantage is not very good. He does have good availability, is a okay class, and has good growths and bases. So I do think he's a solid B tier unit. I think he transcends a lot of these other crappier growth units, but I don't think he's A material. He's just kind of okay. Evol is kind of a hard unit to rank. She's exceptional at the beginning of the game. Of course, she's a Jagan, but she's a Jagan during a portion of the game that you don't really need it, especially also having access to Dogdar. When she's re-recruited, she's okay. She's useful, but not that exceptional. I'm going to put her in C, just because she has a niche, but it's really small. So I think that's a good place to put her. Next, we have Dogdar, who is an exceptional unit. He's your Jagan, not only at the beginning of the game, but also acts as a Jagan when he's re-recruited. He's just awesome. He's got really strong stats. He's got the continue skill, which is good at times and not good at other times. It actually makes him kind of frail, despite how bulky he truly is. But yeah, I think easy S tier for Dogdar. You will use him in every playthrough, and I would recommend doing so. I don't think he's as good as a lot of these other units that have some kind of special utility, but he's really good. Then we have Tanya, who is actually probably the worst character in the game. Her early availability as opposed to Miranda maybe makes her like better than Miranda, but she's quite bad. I will say, because of the way that broken weapons and still getting experience even if you miss or deal no damage works in this game, you can actually get her to level 20 pretty easily on the first chapter. And it's funny, you can see how bad she is because she's still not that useful. Even if you do that, she's still pretty crappy. So yeah, Archer's just not that good, and she doesn't have very good bases or growth. So next we have Marty. Marty, of course, is S tier. He is the best character in the game. We love to meme with Marty, but truthfully, Marty is definitely a D tier unit. Maybe at the top of D tier just because his availability is so good. But yeah, 0 skill and 0 speed is really bad, obviously. And yeah, but he does have really good availability. Maybe even breaks his way into C. Maybe. We'll put him in C. I love Marty. We'll put him in C. Next we have Ronan, who I know I keep saying characters are interesting, but Thracia has a really interesting way of making characters. Ronan is really interesting. I haven't mentioned movement stars too much, but basically for each movement star you get a 5% chance to move twice in a turn. Most units have only one, but characters like Tina, I think Sarah, Pan, there's somebody, Golzis, I think there's some other units have a bunch of these, up to 5. Ronan does too. Ronan also has a really good magic growth, which you might think is really useless on a bow user, and it is to a certain extent, but it makes him have really strong resistance, which is pretty rare in the game. Does this combine to make him a great character? No, probably not, but he is a really fun character. I'm gonna put him in C ahead of all these other units just because he does something really unique. I think I just messed up the ordering here, but whatever. But yeah, Ronan is one of my favorite characters in the game because he's just so unique, but yeah, archers are really bad. So yeah, there you have it. There's my tier list. This wound up being way longer, but there's just so much to talk about in Thracia. Again, I am not the end all be all when it comes to this game. If you disagree with any of this, as always, feel free to let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm always interested in what the people think. But yeah, I had a lot of fun making this. I had a lot of fun playing Thracia. Again, it's a game that I don't necessarily want to play over and over again, but every once in a while, it's amazing, and it probably is my favorite Fire Emblem game. It's just, I mean, you can see all the characters here. They're all so cool and unique. It's a truly great game. Highly recommend trying it if you haven't in the past. But yeah, as always, thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. We're going to be starting Fire Emblem 6 really soon here. In fact, that'll probably be the next upload is Fire Emblem 6 Iron Man Hard Mode Part 1. So if you're interested in that, be on the lookout for that. And I will see you then.